growing weary of running from room to room, practicing one-tooth insurance-driven dentistry? Then stay tuned for the latest episode of The Lionhearted, where Dr. Stephen Rasner will hand you the blueprint for what many call the gold standard of general practice dentistry.
Hi everyone, it's Dr. Steve Rasner, and you're tuned in to The Lionhearted. One technical note before we start. I know Beth jumped in at the beginning of the last podcast and promised that I'll have the echo fixed. Well, it's not probably fixed because I'm about as technically savvy as a stop sign, and I'm here alone and don't have any techie people around to help me fix what may be the echo. So put up with me. Hopefully the information will be okay to listen to. Anyway, so the last couple podcasts, you've heard me talk about the importance of your case presentation skills. And I've been trying to tie that into you to how it's played out for me with certain case presentations that I've done and how that impacted that given day or that given week. And, some weeks result in not so great weeks, and I want to tell you why. And other weeks result in monster weeks, which is kind of the title of this particular podcast. How do the protocols all put together result in a monster week? And when I say a monster week, I mean a monster good week for you. One where you go home with a smile on your face on Thursday or Friday, whatever your last day is, because you feel good about what happened that week. I mean, isn't that what this is all about? One of the reasons I continue to do this, and you got to know that I have a very niche following. I don't have to tell you this. I don't have thousands of people each week downloading my podcast. I have a consistent, strong following. And it amazes me because it's from all over the world. By the way, hello, Israel. I saw some new downloads there this past week. And because I think it's important, like on other forums that you probably are a part of, that you don't feel you're alone. And what I hope you get from me, first of all, I would assume we're like-minded, which is why you're tuned in to begin with. I hope you understand by now that I am genuine and authentic, because I have no other agenda here. I mean, there's nothing in this for me other than I really like the fact that I have a connection to many of you and that I am helping many of you, because you give me that feedback. Why else would you do that? And of course I meet some of you through the courses that I give in my office, but that's not for all of you, because not all of you are interested in surgical courses. There's probably more efficient ways for me to promote that. It is what it is. And maybe it's true of all podcasters. I don't know. I mean, I don't follow other podcasts, but that's why I'm doing this. And then lately why I'm doing what I'm doing is because I think it's the best way to help you right now. Meaning, we're in the middle of a pandemic. It's my first pandemic in 40 years. I believe it's the world's first significant pandemic since 1918. So I'm trying to give you how I'm navigating this. And by the way, I always like to start with my emails. I know Beth probably drives Beth nuts. Beth's my administrator, by the way. She edits these and takes care of my courses and all that kind of stuff. She's very wonderful. I'm fortunate to have her. And email me at my name, Dr. Rasner, DrRasner @AOL.com. And I love to hear from you guys. So look, here we are. I'm talking to you in early August. And it's 10 weeks back for me, I believe. So here's my report card. And you got to understand, like many of you watching, I am the worst critic of myself. I could have 10 great things happen to me when I present at a lecture, or 10 great things happen to me in a given day. It's not a virtue. I will focus on the one thing that didn't go as well as I wanted to. I wish I wasn't like that. It is not a good way to be. But I got to tell you, you need to believe in this stuff because it works. It just works. I got to tell you, 10 weeks back, and not every week's been good, and I'm going to go into some of that. The results are astonishing. They are. If somebody had told me on the week of May 18th, which is when I returned, and I'm only telling you this as a comparison for you to, you don't have to do the numbers I'm doing, but are you in the same flow? Are you better, way better than you were, and why? And the why is what I'm sharing with you every week. It is really what's carrying me. So when I say the results have been outstanding, the response of my team, the response of patients returning. Remember, for those of you out of the country, I'm in the state of New Jersey. We have a very strict governor. In the states, every state's got its governor, and they vary in their opinions on what we should be doing and not doing. And we have a particularly conservative one. It's difficult and to do a lot of things that we could do prior to the pandemic. It's not patient friendly even in terms of the atmosphere in my state. And in spite of that, and I don't really know how the other offices are doing, but I've had fluctuations, and I know why I have, but following the protocols that I try to share with you each week, which I know range, and as I've said lately, we've been really all over case presentation because I think it's the most important thing for you that you could improve upon. But there's other things I did, and you got to remember when I say this to you, this is a guy that's been in practice 40 years. So me watching expenses, for example, is not something I often have done in a decade or two. Because what happens to many of you that you can relate to is you kind of get on automatic pilot. You know what I mean? You go in, you put your 4 days in, or whatever days you're putting in. At the end of the week, you know what you have in your business checking account, and did the bills get paid? And, we tend to just react when alarms or red flags go off in different arenas of our business world. And one of the areas I was really concerned about because I didn't know what revenues would be. And revenues for me have fluctuated near 80% of what they were. And that's easy to figure out for me because I'm seeing less patients. If I was seeing the number of patients I was seeing, I think I would be right where I was. And that's I'll repeat the word outstanding, because I didn't know what to anticipate when I came back. The thought of somebody spending the amount of money it takes sometimes to restore their mouths properly, given what they have, given their desires, which is all part of case presentation, I just thought wouldn't happen as much as it is. There's been some weeks, and I'm going to tell you about the last 2 weeks in a minute, where it didn't happen. But when you add it all up, I'm back 10 weeks. I'm not giving you 2 weeks science. Not only are the numbers at 80%, but the overall net is better because I'm using less products. My labs are a little less. My staff is a little less. I'm cognizant and aware, like I wasn't looking at that stuff weekly like I am now, which you should be doing. You have to. So one thing I've done is I've watched expenses. And when I say watch them, you got to take action. You got to go to the person that's ordering your supplies and tell them, things are different. You don't want to run out of anything, but we don't need to be backed up or stocked up as much, perhaps, pre-pandemically when we're operating at 100%. Or to be quite honest with you, in my particular situation, I'm very hands-off on when my staff comes in and when my staff leaves. And some staff members would get there an hour plus before we would open up. If I start seeing patients at 9 o'clock, they may be there 7:45. And I don't inventory what they're doing. Are you kidding me? I get there about 10 minutes before these days. There's many times in my career, and I would advocate you do this unless things are just humming. I would be there 1 hour before for many, many years to get all the things done that have nothing to do with that day's productivity. Calling referring doctors back, calling my labs, you get me? Business administrative things. And none of those things add to that day's productivity, so that when it was time to go to work at 9 o'clock, I was working at 9 o'clock. I always try to be authentic with you, and I haven't done that as much in recent years because things have been pretty good and pretty automatic pilot, and at times in our career, that does happen. Probably makes me less efficient because I'm not aware. But I put out a memo recently because the PPP money, that's the Paycheck Protection Program, ran out for me personally because I used it all up before they extended it to 24 weeks. So we're back to real time with me. The government's not paying my payroll. So I hadn't written any messages or memos like that to my staff in a long time. I said, I want you to tighten up your hours. I don't want you coming an hour before. Get there enough time to set up the rooms, review the charts of that day, and that should be somewhere between 15 minutes and 30 minutes. Is that saving me a fortune? Of course not. But it's me engaging. It's me getting involved. I'm trying to tell you in these recent podcasts how following these principles have carried me. So here's another one. You hear me talk about developing a large nucleus in your practice, and that's a whole couple podcasts in itself, and I've done a lot of talk on that already. And what I mean by that, and the whole key to that phrase, having a large nucleus, is all about being flexible with your patients who accept or don't accept your treatment to a degree. Some of this is going to be redundant for some of you, but it's just too important for me to skip over. So what I mean about a large nucleus is that when any new patient comes into my office, we try to create an experience that even if they don't accept a treatment, which many of them don't, they don't leave with a bad taste in their mouth. And that's not 100%, but it's very close. And so what happens to me sometimes is that patients return. I didn't even remember they were there 3 years earlier because, I thought maybe they just went somewhere else because it costs less. And you can bet there are a number of patients in my practice and your practice. No matter how skillful you are, no matter what you do, the bottom line is money. They lose their insurance. I don't even take insurance. Can you imagine that? Even when I say it to you, it took so many years for me to get to that point. I know some of you listening are in the same boat as me, and some of you are on your way to doing it, and some of you are not at all on your way to doing it. And you need to make a plan because it's a very unspoken about and overlooked, unbelievable weakness to your future to rely on insurance companies. It's just toxic. I can't believe there's not more discussion about it, or it's just not put out there in the open, or there's not a 60 Minutes television show investigation on how unfair those practices are. Insurance companies just decided 15 years ago to, cut our reimbursements by up to 40%. And many of you are forced to accept it, just like I would be if I was starting out practice. So I get it. But you have to have a plan. And maybe if I was taking notes right now on what I'm saying, that would be something to rediscuss. And write to me if you want that plan, and I will discuss it. What would be a good 5-year plan? Because it's going to take you 5 years to get out of these toxic insurance. Do you understand the power of doing it? Do you understand when I go in on a given day, I get paid the fees that are my fees? That hygienists just love working for me because there's no write-offs. If you add to that the principles that I believe in of getting paid up front whenever we can, which is a very high percentage, then collections are extraordinarily high as well. And please believe that I don't think any of the things I'm saying right now are just a piece of cake to do, and and that we're all in the same boat, whether you've been practicing for 2 years or many years like I have. It takes a lot of work to get there, but it's so powerful and allows me to do the other things, and it frees your mind. It frees your mind to make you a better entrepreneur, makes you a better leader in your office when you're not saddled down by the weight of what did I really take in this week? I mean, I produced blah, 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 but I took in that. Some of you don't even look at that. I know you don't. You do what I did. I know what you do. You get X amount of dollars per week or month, and you don't even, and it kind of works for you. Or you get to a level and you adjust your personal living expenses, or you don't put any money away at all. And you just, because change is hard, man. It is. I understand it, change is hard. But these principles that I review with you every week are paying off. I have never had the cushion I have right now in our business expense account, despite that we're 20% off. And it's because of a combination of things. Back to the nucleus that I got off the track of. So doing the large nucleus over all these years, think about it. The nucleus of people consists of this. It consists of those active patients. I always picture it as this big whirlwind, like you'd see a hurricane on a weather map. So spinning off of that are patients that always come to us. They come at 6 months if they're supposed to, 4 months, 3 months. That's not a huge section of the cloud. And then there's patients that come and go all the time. They may come and go in intervals of somewhere between, 1 year and 3 years. They just don't keep up all the time. And then the third one are people that are less frequent than that. And, I alluded to it before, but the key to developing that big nucleus is having a very trusting, ethical environment. I'm telling you it is. I hope this translates to you right now. It's being so transparent in that initial visit, being so organized like it was a Broadway play, like a movie. I mean it. Like everything counts. From the first phone call, before they ever step foot in your office, actually before that it counts. From the branding in your community, your marketing you're using, to they engage in the first phone call, they come into the office. Certainly what's happening in that very first visit. Everything from what they're verbally hearing to what they're seeing with their eyes, particularly now with the pandemic, to the moment of truth, which I always refer to, is when we start engaging with them, whether it's the auxiliary personnel right before you get there. In my case, it's either a hygienist or a dental assistant taking x-rays, charting. You don't think it makes a difference? If I put just anybody in that room, you might think I would do that because I just got to crank out a set of x-rays and somebody can engage a little bit with that new patient and until I get in there and then we'll rely on my skill set at that point. No, it's really, really important that initial person that's walking them back when we're beginning the actual clinical engagement is full of personality, full of warmth, full of making people feel value. Man, look, if this is too much for you and you're doing okay the way you are, then turn me off because this is real, man. It is. This is how everything happens for me. It's certainly not just big numbers at all. It isn't. It's the pride that you built this, that you're looking around. Aren't you doing that in your daily operations? You can hear and see those people that work for you are executing the protocols that you believed in, that you believe should be representing your name in your business. Or if you're an associate, It's your name in somebody else's business. If I was an associate, and I was before, I don't care what I was doing. I am giving the absolute damn best effort and representation of my name in that organization that that person will ever encounter. Better than the owner who hired me. I'm not playing. I'm being real here. This is how you make it. You know, when I was 18 years old, I got hired by, ironically, the McDonald's restaurant that is located across the street from my first office. It's still there. That McDonald's is still there, and I'm across the street. Obviously, I didn't know I would own that building 20 years later. And, you know, when I was hired, I remember I would have to scrub floors. I mean, I know this sounds like, you know, your parents telling you they walk 20 miles to a school every day, but it's the truth. You know, I hope most of you believe in giving the best representation of myself, whether I'm working as an associate or it's my own business or my own practice. What are you going to do? Something less than you're capable of? So I scrubbed those floors as if they were selling those floors, not McDonald's hamburgers. And I was appointed manager, I'm not even kidding, which was silly because I was only there for a summer. The same afternoon I was scrubbing floors, the same morning, that afternoon. I don't care what you're doing. You always have to represent yourself the best possible way. So this doesn't just apply to owners. So yes, that first initial visit when they're coming through your doors is everything. And you can create an environment, and you know, and we've been really focused in on the last couple podcasts of what goes on in that operatory when you're in there, which is what we need to keep doing. And a lot of patients leave. And it's okay if they leave and don't make a commitment, as long as we created an environment that I think they'll think highly of. Maybe they couldn't come to us because maybe they have to go to a place that's more affordable. I mean, that happens. But the point of me telling you all this is my nucleus, and in the nucleus of leaving a good taste in patients' mouths, is you drawing the line as to what works for you. In other words, can you segment treatment is what I'm saying. And of course you can in many, many cases. But you have to draw a line. You always hear me say the line in the sand of what you'll overlook. That's for a discussion of other podcasts, but just briefly, for example, I never overlooked a perio. I don't know how you could be comfortable, or any of us would be okay, if the patient comes in and their primary need, while they're there in your office on this given day, is to get a crown on a tooth that broke. You know that I advocate a comprehensive approach. I am not a fan. I do not condone fixing their problem that they came to you with, rescheduling them, and hoping that they will come back and like you because you fixed the one problem. I know to some of you that's not going to sound like that is a good approach. So I'm sitting here actually telling you, I advocate that you look at their whole mouth no matter why they came to you. And sometimes we can accommodate that key problem on that given day, but very often we can't. And I am here to say to you that that approach has worked for me for as many years as I can remember. I don't know what year I developed that approach. I've been practicing 40 years, but I can tell you that it works. I remember thinking we always had to clean them the first visit we meet them. I remember thinking that that would turn a lot of patients off, that we're not cleaning them. Well, how the heck could you clean them when you don't even know the condition of their perio? So one very, very strong line in the sand in my practice is that. On the other end of that spectrum, do they have to replace all missing teeth? Do they have to replace questionable restorations that I really can't find decay, but maybe I see little cracks in the old amalgams or composites? No, they don't. And, you know, it's a very easy approach to follow. You know, I look at 5 arenas of their mouth. But back to the point for this podcast, That approach has worked so well for me. And my nucleus has spun off so many patients coming back from the pandemic when we were shut down that I had to hire 2 additional hygienists, not full-time, but part-time, because, and this is another way that I've engaged more than I was before the pandemic, and I heard, this is how this happened. I heard my front desk rescheduling patients for hygiene that had been canceled during the 2 months we were out, 6 to 8 weeks from the present date. And that's bad business. Had I not engaged in that, had I just let that go, or if I didn't hear it, I don't know the impact. It wouldn't have made my practice collapse, but it's me being much more hands-on right now because I have to be. And I have to be because I care about what I've created over the past 40 years, like you have. So the engagement is part of the Lionhearted Dentist. Of course you're engaged because you're passionate about what we do and you care about the product that represents you in your office. And no, I don't want patients hearing, our first opening will be late September. Will that work for you? Listen, you can't do everything. I can't get on the phone, but I can listen. I can be cognizant, have my ears open, and yours should be, to what's going down in my office every day. So not only did I have to hire 2 hygienists, I had, for the first time in a long time, I had to hire dental assistants, which I'm in the process of doing right now. So that's a new hands-on thing for me that I hadn't done in a long time. And that's because I had some lost staff as a result of Corona. Again, remember, which I'll have to cover in the next podcast, I'm getting to how to create those monster weeks, which I started this podcast with. But the monster week, and the monster week is huge case acceptance. It's high cash flow. It's feeling patients are really appreciative that they chose you to come to. I'll tell you about a case in the next podcast. I'll tell you about a Thursday, yesterday, where we collected $55,000 in my office, one office. Not produced, collected. And I had 3 patients scheduled on that day. I had no idea this was going to unfold the way it did. And some of the stories of how it got to that, which, by the way, was significantly over a 6-digit collection week. And it really was on 3 days because we had a hurricane, or remnants of a hurricane, here in New Jersey on a Tuesday. So I kind of lost that day. So that's well over 6 digits on 3 days. And if you're just tuning in, you might think I'm infatuated with that's all I care about. It is not. I don't even ever have to think about it. It just happens under the principles that we're practicing each week and talking about with the Lionhearted Dentist. So I'm going to pick up here next week and I'm going to talk to you about specifically some case presentations and skills connected with that led to that extraordinary week. By the way, that week was preceded by just a dreadful week. Not dreadful that I was embarrassed how we represented our care or anything like that, but by, the numbers were not good the week before. But here's the point, and I'm telling you this on purpose, because you can have off weeks and still have a net result at the end of the year, and you're going to. And there's reasons why. Maybe the first couple of weeks you try some of these principles, it doesn't work. Long term, and it's not very long term. If I could be in your office and coach you and say, go out and do this, tell me about this patient as much as you can. You might be surprised what I ask you to tell me about that patient. And at the end of the day, the monster weeks, I got to repeat this, it's not money. Certainly that's a good part of it. Certainly it's nice not worrying about dollars and cents as a dentist. But the pride that you're doing it right is so much more epic I got a number of colleagues that would blow my numbers out the door with, have 12 offices or more offices. It's not just a numbers thing here at all. Anyway, guys, keep fighting, man. This works. I'm telling you, it works. Stay with me. Thanks for emailing me. Thanks for following me. See you next week on The Lionhearted Dentist.